Hackney Wick is one of my favourite parts of London. It's situated in the shadow of Stratford's skyscrapers but has a pretty distinctive vibe which is unique. It feels as if East Berlin had landed in East London, but it's an area which gets a lot right from an urban planning and placemaking perspective, and so here's a whole video on why I like Hackney Wick. This small corner of East London was until recently an industrial estate and a waste disposal site, but it offered cheap space which attracted artists from more expensive parts of the city. Eventually more places opened, and what we have now is one of London's most thriving creative districts. Here at Queen's Yard, these old industrial sheds have been transformed into clubs, bars and restaurants, and there's even a theatre. Every year it plays host to Queen's Yard Summer Party, a neighbourhood festival which brings the area's varied venues together. This place is just a reminder that you don't have to overthink placemaking. Sometimes it's just as simple as putting out some benches, stringing up some fairy lights, and suddenly you have a strong place. The newer stuff built on the Fish Island side of Hackney Wick is also really good. They're all built in a style which resembles the old industrial warehouses in the area. There's lots of big windows, and the place has clearly been created with pedestrians in mind. Now, there are a lot of reasons why I like Hackney Wick, so let's create a bit of a structure so I don't start going off on a tangent. Number 1, placemaking. Queen's Yard is kind of the hub of the area and feels a bit like an old town square. This is where you'll find some of the area's best clubs, bars and restaurants. But it's essentially just a car park which is still in use for most of the week. What's clever is that this still manages to feel like an inviting, human-scale place despite literally being a car park. These food stalls and restaurant terraces help to animate the space and introduce a human scale, while these industrial sheds have been repurposed as clubs and bars. We rarely think much of buildings like this. Oftentimes these buildings are the first ones to be demolished ahead of a major redevelopment. But taking buildings that people think very little of and shining a new light on them is what good placemaking is all about. You also have these bits along the canal which these restaurants spill out onto. Combined with the old brick warehouse on the other side of the canal, this creates a really beautiful place. There's also Barge East, which is a restaurant on a boat, but there's this great big green space next to it which hosts parties in the summer and is a clever use of what is essentially just a grass verge between a road and a canal. In fact, as soon as you arrive at the station in Hackney Wick, you're hit with excellent placemaking. These food stalls make the best use of this small pedestrian plaza, and you're immediately struck by how peaceful it is. Usually when you come out of a London Underground or Overground station, you're on a busy high street with traffic and sirens. But in Hackney Wick, you arrive into somewhere that's vibrant but in a quiet, relaxing way. And that's kind of what Hackney Wick is all about. Number 2 is celebration of heritage. We've already touched on this a bit, but Hackney Wick really celebrates its industrial heritage. This is nothing new. Cities all over the UK and the world have an old industrial area which has been transformed into a nice residential neighbourhood. But Hackney Wick takes this to the next level. Pavements are still uneven and it still looks a bit scruffy in parts, but this is a celebrated aspect of the area and adds to its appeal. In many ways it's London's answer to East Berlin. This is in parts still an active industrial area. You wouldn't necessarily think it was possible for an industrial area to coexist with somewhere that people live, but Hackney Wick is a good demonstration of this. Number 3, street art. Hackney Wick has some of the highest densities of street art in London, and upcoming artists are encouraged to make their mark on the area. There are some really great murals everywhere. My favourite is probably these 2 buildings on White Post Lane. I also love this mural which kind of climbs up the building. Decorating buildings like this is a great way to add some colour to our cities, and I wish we saw more of it in places. For number 4, I want to focus on new development. While much has been preserved in one part of Hackney Wick, the southern part around Fish Island has been totally transformed. The area is so called because when this marshy island was industrialised, they named all the streets after fish and the nickname rose from that. Until recently, this was one of North East London's primary waste disposal sites. But with the arrival of the London Overground in 2010, there was an aspiration to develop the area to take advantage of Hackney Wick's tube map debut. However, the council were keen not to see Hackney Wick's distinctive character erased by redevelopment. and they wanted to ensure the pioneering people and businesses who had helped create this distinctive character were celebrated and not priced out. They launched a strategy to deliver 6,800 new homes in the area to help keep local housing values under control, and created one of London's first creative enterprise zones, an initiative funded by the Mayor which helps artists and creative businesses get support with business costs and finding permanent affordable space. 4 different architecture practices collaborated on the master plan, and clear ground rules were set which govern building heights and types of materials to be used. Building heights were restricted to between 6 and 7 stories, and they developed a rigorous architectural language which ensured the new buildings reflected the area's industrial, fashion and artistic heritage. To achieve this, the buildings are styled as old warehouses, with a brick-clad rectilinear form which anchors them to the street. Large windows let in plenty of light for residents while animating the street wall and attracting your eyes. When it comes to good urbanism and walkability, this place gets a lot of things right. For instance, creating a walkable neighbourhood is not simply about providing high-density housing with shops and amenities that people can walk to. Truly walkable neighbourhoods will make that walk pleasant and enjoyable as well. Firstly, pavements are wide and roads are narrow. There are tree canopies which protect pedestrians from the sun and rain. Clever street design also looks after pedestrians. The narrow roads encourage cars to drive slower, and where there's a road crossing, it's built as an extension of the pavement, so that instead of pedestrians crossing the road, motorists are crossing the pavement. This layout makes it safer, more pleasant and more convenient to walk instead of drive here. Keeping these trees from before the area was redeveloped makes the neighbourhood feel more established, and they also create some really aesthetically pleasing views along the street. Each building is unique, using different materials or window stylings to create a diverse street scene which is interesting and pleasant to explore. These townhouses break up the street wall and prevent it from appearing monolithic. They provide a clever moment of active frontage both with the front doors and the terraces above, and add to the area's housing stock diversity. This might be my 3rd video where I've mentioned townhouses. I like them because they cater to people who want a front door, garden and a bit more space, but in a dense form which can be justified in cities with high land values. Not all city dwellers want to live in apartments, and therefore townhouses make a broader range of people attracted to city living. Mixed demographic neighbourhoods also increase societal cohesion, so this is something I'd like to see a lot more of. These small squares break up the dense street grid and provide more space for pedestrians and a focal point for the neighbourhood. The architects made a conscious decision to limit building heights to around 6 or 7 stories, and this has paid off. They allow more light to reach street level than skyscrapers do and are the unsung heroes of the city. While big statement buildings are great and provide landmarks, much of our greatest cities are made up of these kinds of buildings. Here at Fish Island, while each building is unique, they all sit harmoniously together and each enhances their surroundings, rather than creating 1 or 2 statement buildings in an otherwise fairly nondescript neighbourhood. The developers concentrated more on the overall scene. Here the buildings perfectly frame the canal. And this looks like an established residential neighbourhood, not somewhere that has been built in the last 5 years. A lot of the architecture here feels warm and inviting. There are no huge glass facades, and the brick and stone materials make it look like a place that has always been here. In one of the architect's words, it all feels cohesive, robust and confident. To round off with number 5, I'm really excited to see how the area transforms in future. There are more development proposals planned for the area, which all stick to the same rules as before, but each design is different and will contribute towards gradually improving the area further. Hackney Wick might not get as much attention as other regeneration areas like Vauxhall and Battersea, but Hackney Wick's smaller scale is vital. To solve the UK's housing crisis, we need to build thousands more homes in pretty much every neighbourhood of our largest cities. And in my opinion, Hackney Wick presents itself as a blueprint for how to do it well. If you enjoyed this tour of one of my favourite parts of London, please like and subscribe. I want to do more videos like this about other parts of London and other UK cities, so your support will really motivate me to get it done. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.